Chairman Jordan, what can you tell us about this case as you get set to interview Hunter Biden this Wednesday?
Well, my big takeaway from Jim Biden's interview is who are you going to believe? Jim Biden, who multiple times has changed his story. Jim Biden, who had multiple business ventures that failed. Jim Biden, who had multiple people he still owes hundreds of thousands of dollars to. Or Tony Bobulinski, whose story has not changed, who's been a successful business guy, and who came forward and said certain things that Jim Biden just totally disagreed with. Jim Biden said that Hunter Biden that Joe Biden never met with Tony Bobulinski. Tony Bobulinski has said that for 4 years and been forward about that. So I don't think Jim Biden was necessarily square with us in this interview. And as Chairman Comer mentioned, that's why the staff is going back through the transcript and figuring out exactly what he said and where that disagrees with what we know to be true.
Are you going to ask Hunter Biden what the business was? Because, you know, looking at all of these millions of dollars that you have identified that have gone to Biden family members, begs the question, what were they paying for?
Yeah, they were paying for the brand, access to the brand. The brand was Joe Biden. We knew that from Devin Archer, who was Hunter Biden's business partner. We knew that when we got that when Devin Archer was in his deposition back last summer. So everyone knows it was access to the brand. Best example is Hunter Biden and his business partners are working with CEFC, these 8 individuals from China. They're trying to close this deal. It doesn't get finalized. The agreement doesn't get done until they're at the Four Seasons restaurant and Joe Biden does a drop-in, stops in and sees Hunter Biden, his business partners, and the 8 individuals from CEFC, the 8 Chinese individuals. They're there at the lunch. Joe Biden gets in, makes a short presentation, and then leaves. Then a few weeks later, that's when the $3 million wire comes into Hunter Biden. That was the brand coming in to close the deal. That's how this whole thing operated. And again, the White House story about Joe Biden's involvement has changed multiple times, but Tony Bobulinski's story hasn't, and the whistleblower story hasn't changed. But David Weiss, the White House, Joe Biden, Jim Biden, their story has changed multiple times. We'll see what Hunter Biden says this Wednesday.
Well, you know, Chairman Comer, your Democrat colleagues are mocking the investigation. You know that. They say it's all Russian disinformation. So give us your take on Mr. Smirnov now being indicted. And saying that a Russian passed on the story. And I also want to get your take on this latest information that you have gotten from Mr. Galanis, who is still in prison.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all we knew about Smirnov was the 1023 allegation. We knew from FBI sources that the FBI had never investigated it. And all we knew was what Christopher Wray told us, that this informant was one of their most trusted and highest paid in the Bureau, and he had been in that position for over 10 years. So that's all we knew about him. He wasn't an important part of the case, but it was a tip that we should investigate. We are not going to leave any stone unturned. We're going to investigate every allegation of Biden influence peddling. With respect to Galanis, the individual we interviewed this past Friday, what we learned was very similar to what Tony Bobulinski said, that he was familiar with the CEFC deal. He knew that Joe Biden played an integral role in helping set this up, that this deal was set up when Joe Biden was vice president, and that the Chinese believed that Joe Biden was going to be an equity owner in this, just like what we saw with AmeriCorps Health. This is how the Bidens sold the brand. They didn't just use Joe Biden as a crutch. They used Joe Biden as a potential board member, as a potential equity owner, and that's how they were able to receive tens of millions of dollars from our enemies around the world.
So what do you think was most egregious or important for us to understand about the testimony you took from Galanis, who is sitting in an Alabama prison?
Well, there are 3 people now, 3 former associates. There aren't that many former Biden associates, but we now have 3 that have testified that Joe spoke with all the principals that were sending money mysteriously to the Biden shell companies that were then being laundered down to the Biden family members. 3 different people that have said now that Joe was going to be involved in some type of ownership arrangement. This is a pattern, and it didn't just happen with the CEFC deal in China. It also happened with the AmeriCorps scam with the healthcare company in Florida. So we're establishing a pattern here of not only influence peddling, but also of Joe Biden's involvement in the influence peddling schemes.
Chairman Jordan, I find it really stunning that Smirnov gets indicted, and they say that it's because he got information from Russians and it was not true. And yet Christopher Steele is still out there. There has been no accountability whatsoever. You all have been unable to pin anybody down about what we know to be true now, that the Russia collusion story was a lie and that Steele dossier was made up. How come Christopher Steele was never indicted?
Yeah, no kidding. He continued to get paid after they found out what he told the FBI wasn't true. And, of course, now we have this Smirnov guy, and he gets indicted and arrested not once but twice. Here's the interesting thing about Smirnov. David Weiss, the guy who's been investigating Hunter Biden for now almost 5 years, David Weiss had this information, the 1023, back in 2020. What did he do for the last 3 years? What did he do for the last 3.5 years? Why didn't he look into it before? Because all we knew is what Chairman Comer just said. Christopher Wray said this was a great source, confidential human source that we've been paying for 14 years. He's helped put away bad guys. The safety of him is jeopardized if we give you access to this 1023. And now maybe the guy did lie. I don't know. But it seems strange to me because it looks like David Weiss didn't do a darn thing with this until after the plea deal falls apart last July. Because if you read the indictment, it's when in July is when they go talk to the confidential human sources handler and start this process that ultimately led to his arrest. So we'll have to see. The other thing is, as you point out, in 2016, it was Trump-Russia collusion. We found out that was garbage. In 2020, it was, the laptops of Russian information operation. We knew that was garbage. And now here we go, the third time, one more time, they're bringing out this story. Again, maybe this Smirnov guy did lie to him. We'll have to see. But there's a lot of questions that I think many people have about how it was all dealt with.
We're gonna connect the dots to the national security threat here. But Chairman Comer, there is a story out on Public by Michael Schellenberger, the independent journalist, and he writes this: Chinese control over U.S. oil and gas at heart of Biden family influence peddling, new whistleblower reveals. Do you agree with that this was all about selling the U.S.'s oil and gas businesses to China? Is that the crux of the deals between the Hunter Biden group and China?
I think that was a big part of it. I think the whole premise of what CEFC was paying the Bidens to do was to be able to gain access to all of our markets, not just our energy markets, but our farmland, our manufacturing. The whole purpose of CEFC, which was the Chinese government, that's what people have to understand. The Chinese government was CEFC. They were paying the Biden family. They wanted to initiate their Belt and Road Initiative in the United States. We've seen them do that in African countries. We've seen them do that in many third world countries. Now they were taking steps forward to try to do this in the United States, and they were using the Biden family as their entry point into to be able to gain access to our financial markets, our energy markets, and everything else. That's the thing that every American should be offended at, that in the private sector, Joe Biden was going to work for the Chinese government. And that may answer why he has a China first, America last policy as president.
Well, I mean, Chairman Jordan, it is stunning because this entire term as president, this president has been attacking fossil fuels and pushing this climate change agenda. So cutting off America from fossil fuels and selling it, enabling our number one adversary to become that much stronger.
Here's a fact that we learned from Jim Biden that supports this idea that it was all about access to the Bidens. The initial deal with CEFC involved Hunter Biden and then James Gilliar, Rob Walker, and Mr. Bobulinski. Those people all get, when Jim Biden's brought in, the other three partners get pushed out, and Hunter Biden and Jim Biden say, we're just going to do the deal. It's just going to be the two Bidens and China. And the Chinese guys with CEFC, they were fine with that. We asked Jim Biden. They were fine. Jim Biden said, I didn't want these other guys in the deal. So it was all about access to that family, access to that brand. That was what was at stake here and what was being peddled and what was being sold.
Yeah, and I know real quick, one of those Chinese officials sent Hunter Biden a diamond. I've been told that diamonds are a very good way to hide wealth. You just give it to your, children or whatever. You don't put it in the will. You don't put it on your taxes. Was that the plan here, James Comer?
Yeah, well, he actually got 2 diamonds from China, one while Joe Biden was vice president. So while Joe Biden was vice president, your family's not supposed to receive gifts, Maria. Hunter Biden got a Porsche from Kazakhstan and a diamond from China. I mean, if the American people or the Democrats on the Oversight Committee aren't outraged by this, then I don't know what would outrage anyone. The American people don't want their public officials to be on the take, and that's what it sure looks like the Biden family did the whole time Joe Biden was vice president.
All right, we will leave it there and wait for the testimony next week on Wednesday. Gentlemen, thank you. We'll be following your work for sure.